Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Health Committee meeting. It is Wednesday, November 13th, 2024, the appointed hour of 9:30 a.m. I'm calling the meeting to order. As we gather this morning, I wish to acknowledge, on behalf of committee and our community, that we meet on traditional territory of the Omama-Wenini. We thank the Omama-Wenini and express our respect and support for their rich history. We're extremely grateful for their many and continuing displays of friendship. We thank as well all the generations of Indigenous peoples who have been careful stewards of these lands for millennia. Ms. Van Starkenburg, has the roll been called, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and we have quorum.
Thank you so much. I would invite now committee disclosure of pecuniary interest, and if there is any, the general nature thereof, please. I see none. With that, I'd seek a motion to adopt the open session minutes of October 16th, 2024, please. Moved by Councillor Weir, seconded by Councillor Murphy. Any errors or omissions? I see none. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. I'd now seek a motion to adopt the closed minutes of the closed session held on October 16th, 2024, please. Councillor Grills, seconded by Councillor Yon. Once again, Council, if there are any errors or omissions, we would have to devolve into a closed session. If not, I will call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. There were no delegations at time of mailing. I am not aware of any change to that. Is that correct, Mr. Kelly?
That is still correct.
Thank you. There was also no administration report at time of mailing. I assume that that continues to be so.
That is correct, although there wasn't an announcement last night that was sent out. The administration report would be received and closed today, sir.
Okay, so in fact, the addendum that was distributed last evening will in fact fall under the administration department purview.
That is correct, sir.
Thank you. I had not looked at that particular component, so thank you. You will note, committee, that the agenda has been changed now that there was a closed agenda package that was distributed last evening for your review. With that then, I will ask Chief Nolan, please, to take us through the Emergency Services Department report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to members of committee, we'll start off with the Treasurer's report, which is attached in your packages, page 15 of 103 for today's meeting. And Mr. Chair, if we want to take the time to flip to that document now, I can provide some very quick overview in terms of any anomalies within that package. Sure, maybe that's how we will approach that, and then likewise, Mr. Blackmore, when we get to the long-term care report as well. Do carry on, please, Chief. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So on page 15 of your report today, as it pertains to the Treasurer's report, just to identify a number of lines that may pop out at you as a matter of interest, certainly from a salaries and benefits line, the addition of the MESA program has been new as a cost center, but we have an offsetting revenue associated with the reserves consistent with Council's direction on that. So you'll see that showing up within salaries and benefits just generally. As well, when we look at communications and computer expenses with the transition from ESO to PREHOS or electronic medical record, there were some anticipated additional costs that were consistent with the approvals through that RFP process, through the implementation. So there is some pressure within that budget as well that was also being offset within the balance of the entire budget. Our legal costs, a couple years running now, are higher than we had originally anticipated, many of them related to settlement and conditions related to individual employee cases, and in some circumstances, getting some legal opinion on WSIB cases. We've also looked at other lines, such as the revenue or provincial other, as it's called, and that is provincial revenue associated with the offload program, which is 100% funded by the province, and something that earlier in the year we brought to you as a letter, I believe, from our MPP Yakabuski, and also from the minister announcing the amount. The amount that we're receiving this year is less than we received last year, and that's just based upon the performance as it relates to offload delays within the hospital. So that was brought to us after the budget was struck, but we're only spending within our allowable amounts in that program. So just so you're aware of where that revenue is coming from and why it's less than we anticipated from last year. And then in terms of small equipment and supplies, that has a lot to do with our defibrillators, which we transitioned from LifePacker Stryker to Zoll this year, which was brought forward to committee previously. And also there's pressure there associated with our pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals like milk have gone up in price substantially, and that's something that we're continuing to track. We're also continuing to have drug shortages, which is complicating matters. So really the COVID hangover and some supply and demand, certainly in the pharmaceutical world, is still happening to us. When we look at the special project line, that is the MESA program, just so everyone's aware in terms of the cost allocation. So again, we have a offsetting revenue in that program. And then there's another blip towards the end of the page. Our uniform laundry is something that is continuing to be a cost pressure. And there's also been some significant changes in terms of availability of dry cleaning. A number of dry cleaners have gone out of business, and that's something that seemed to have waned after the pandemic. So there are costs shifting from one supplier to another as it relates to that. And then lastly, around vehicle operation and maintenance, there's actually an entire vehicle that's been allocated in that line that we're going to be moving out into the capital line. So that's a false inflation on that line until we can reconcile it going into the end of the year. And we also did replace an engine on one vehicle that put an additional pressure on that line. So overall, the budget is as it's stated, is doing reasonably well. And some of these explanations are really the toing and froing of the individual lines as they align with the overall variance within the budget at the top of the year. So, Mr. Chair, if you're satisfied, I'm happy to move on to number 2, and we can save questions, or we can answer them now.
I think since we've actually reviewed this, this would be the timely occasion to invite any question or comment, should there be any. I think you did a pretty good job, comprehensive job of identifying some of the larger variances. There was one question, and I'm not sure, Chief, if this would be in your bailiwick or perhaps Mr. Burke's. The revenue interest line, which is about 2/3 of the way down the page, I note that I think perhaps it was this time last year, typically and I believe that the paramedic service is the only entity that does not report interest through the year, and I'm not even sure if we get that at budget time or if that is part of the unaudited financial report that does come in April. But ultimately, it was made quite clear that is always a reconciliation, the interest line on the emergency services. So I'm kind of surprised to see a budget of an anticipation of interest of 56.25. I don't think there's been any treasurer's report where we cited any installments throughout the year that line remained at zeros ultimately until the Q4 report. I wonder, Mr. Burke, if you can shed some light on why we would have been anticipating posting an interest sometime in the first 3 quarters.
Good morning, committee, and thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. No, that would just be I guess you could say an error in the way we've allocated our budget across monthly columns, but typically a number of our departments where there is a requirement to allocate interest, or where the interest that is earned in the bank account may not necessarily be entirely belonging to the department that the bank account is typically associated with. At the end of the year, we would do the allocation to make sure that the interest earned is the fair share of that department. Yes.
Okay, thank you. But for perhaps a little more clarity, I don't think we have heretofore ever anticipated any interest to be posted within the paramedic service. And yet, on that line, clearly it is inferred that we had anticipated posting 3/4 of it when that has not happened before. I'm wondering how that crept in there. What I'm saying is that that line would always be zeros except for the most right-hand column.
Yes, that would be correct. So that's just the program we use to post our budget back into the accounting software has been split on the 12-month basis as opposed to entirely in December. So we can correct that.
Okay, thank you in time for the next report. Thank you. Any further questions or comments, committee? Seeing none, then carry on with your report, please, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And item number 2 related to the Eganville base grand opening. So November 1st, we did a grand opening, had about 100 people, had some dignitaries join us for the day. I think those who stole the show are actually the grade 2-3 class from town. So a big thank you to that school for making that happen and bringing in our next batch of recruits. So we're very happy to welcome them. Really an opportunity here, Mr. Chair, to thank Craig and Jason, Development and Property, and Committee and Council for their support to make that project happen. I think it's a facility that we can all be proud of and provide services beyond the traditional ambulance or paramedic base where we have VTAC there, and I think actually sits in a prominent location within the community as well to remind people that we're there to provide them service. So big thank you to all of them, and of course our partners in Bonnechere Valley and Councillor Murphy for her ongoing cheerleading and support of that project, because it's something that we're very pleased to be a part of the fabric of that community. Item number 3, Mr. Chair, the Mesa team and Renfrew County Housing Partnership. So big thank you to Andrea for being here in committee this morning, because we've been doing some incredible work between our shared frontline staff, engaging people that are living in social housing and community housing. And we're trying to take decidedly Mesa lens in terms of ensuring that those that are vulnerable living within community housing, not only homeless population, not only those with mental health and addictions, but those that are within the walls of the county, so to speak, that they're receiving attention as well. So we have paramedic Chris Day and Andrea's staff that are working every day and engaging that population. We've done 12 wellness clinics at 260 Elizabeth Street, which was our first property that we jointly took on between our departments. And Jason's staff as well, from a maintenance perspective, have been very responsive. So really we're door knocking. We're getting in there. We're making sure that they understand the Mesa program, what we as 3 departments have to offer, and then also working with our broader community partners, Addictions Treatment Services from Renfrew, the Community Mental Health Program at the Pembroke Hospital, and McKay Manor, who are addiction specialists here in the county. And by doing that, we've been able to onboard 100 new people into our community paramedic program through these wellness clinics, and we've completed over 280 clinical assessments. So really proud that we're working on that model. There's a physician, Dr. Gina Agarwal at McMaster University, that did a considerable amount of work using community paramedicine in community housing in the Hamilton area, and we've really borrowed from the evidence from Dr. Agarwal in terms of the impact of those interactions. And one small example for you, Mr. Chair, is simply by being able to have an impact on someone's systolic blood pressure, you can then extrapolate the reductions in heart disease, in cardiovascular disease, stroke rates, and so on to a macroeconomic scale. So we'll be applying our experience based upon the lens of that research. So big thank you to Andrea, Jason, and all of their staff. And with that, we're also working with them to do unit assessments and making sure that the unit conditions and the necessities of life are being provided. And with that, we'll have a good foundational analysis of not only the individuals and their circumstances, but the units, so that through the trifecta of our departments, we're able to have a clearer plan going forward in terms of how we can best support these people so that they don't end up homeless, that they don't end up in hospital, that they don't end up becoming a high user of the 911 system in a way that may have been experienced previously. So when we look at that in terms of wraparound collaborative care, we also have 50 in-person interactions with those folks and their community housing units to date. So a big thank you to them for working through that. And that really is the tip of the iceberg, because with over 1,000 units in the county and many more people than that, it's yeoman's work. But over the next year and a half, we'll be able to have interacted with every person living in community housing and had a good look at not only the property needs, but the health and social services needs of those individuals as well. Item number 4, Mr. Chair, in terms of social media, big thank you to Matthew Grenier, Deputy Chief at the back of the room with us today, and Tiffany Lepac and the entire team in the community programs, because they've been working very diligently to, I'd say, re-engage our social media presence, our public service announcements, and really to share many of the successes of the various parts of the program. I think it aligns as well with CAO Kelly's direction in terms of making sure that ratepayers understand the services that are being provided and that they understand the impact of those services for tax dollars, let alone the social fabric within the county. So I'll not get into the specific details, but there are some extraordinary engagement that we've been able to achieve. For example, our social media campaign published 131 posts on Facebook, generating over 325,000 views, almost 7,000 reactions, and 18,000 video views. So a big thank you to that team for doing that quiet work in the background. And again, this isn't a popularity contest so much as the important messaging that's going out about behavior modification. So our campaign over the last 60 days has been leading up to hunting season, for example, and hunter safety, right? We'll be moving into shoveling reminders so that we don't have the very predictable cardiac arrest on the snowbank over the next couple months, and then we'll be moving into flood season, drowning season, and all of the seasons that keep us busy. So as depressing as that is our contribution based upon the population dynamics that we've come to really well understand through our 911 data and the evidence. Item number 5 is moving into resolutions, Mr. Chair. Would you like me to proceed into
We'll pause at the information items. Chief, thank you, and we will review. And committee, we have already addressed item number 1. Any comments, questions on item number 2? Councillor Murphy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just again, a huge thank you. The opening certainly spurned a lot of buzz in our community, and I'm really excited that the Clinical Assessment Center will be taking appointments starting December 5th. This is great news, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murphy. It's certainly also, I think, important to note, while it was not driven from that perspective, there was a need for the deployment of our paramedics and also for the needs of the community of Bonnechere Valley and their fire hall. But in this instance, it was very fortunate to be able to dovetail into a facility that has been providing service to the community for so long in Eganville, in Bonnechere Valley, and has become such an integral part of the tapestry of that community that we were able to repurpose the building to be able to continue to provide that service and to be part of the fabric of that community moving forward. So in this instance, very pleased that we were able to get a win-win in this situation. Anything on item 3? Councillor Lafreniere, please.
Again, I just want to say kudos for this great preventive partnership that you've created with the housing, Renfrew County Housing. I think that it's just another way of showing how you are always looking ahead and always trying to figure out, okay, how can we prevent things in the future from happening? And I think that it's another way of ensuring the vulnerable community members, no matter if they're housed or not, receive the proper communication and information about the services that are available if they should need them. So I just want to say compliments again. You're always breaking new ground. That's what I'm going to say. So keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lafreniere. I think that it is probably universal, though I cannot say that with certainty, upstream is invariably much more practical and almost universally much more economical as well. Foresight, a stitch in time. So thank you for your comments. Anything further on item 3? Mr. Kelly, please.
I just want to, again, thank staff for this. It's interesting, and I know you don't have this in front of you. It was kind of hot off the press yesterday, or on the weekend, was an email from Steph Neufeld, of course, the detachment commander here in Upper Ottawa Valley, who notes in an email, he's just responding to a series of emails about the crisis, more particularly in Pembroke, where he, and if I could quote him, I'm sure he wouldn't mind, Paramedic Services launched Mesa, which I don't speak for, but can advise that yesterday, which would have been last week, I received word that we were down to 1 encampment in Pembroke as a result of their outreach and connecting individuals to proper supports. This is a huge victory in caps for the city, especially in light of the tragedies that have gone on in other communities, and we are doing great by comparison. So any encampment is too many, but I'm glad to hear that we've got definitely a partner in the OPP, and it's being recognized by them, and again, thank you to staff, both in the housing side and the paramedic side, to have our version of reducing the encampments and the housing situation to a bare minimum here in at least Pembroke.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Kelly. It was absolutely appropriate to bring that forward, and I think the other element that bears noting is that there does continue to be a substantial criminal element that is associated with this crisis in our communities. So very pleased, actually, that I believe it's the Community Crime Unit made a fairly substantial bust, I think last week as well. So certainly kudos to Inspector Neufeld and to the Community Crime Enforcement Unit, because that does continue to be a substantial element of the challenge that confronts us, and it must be reported and made known that we do continue to support those efforts to dramatically reduce the predators within our community, and so kudos certainly for that effort as well. Thank you so much for that. Item number 4, the social media. That brings us to a conclusion. So on to the resolutions, please, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recommendation, the Health Committee recommend the County Council approve the following delegation requests listed in the background at the 2025 Roma Annual Conference, and that the chair of the standing committee along with the warden be designated to attend the delegation. To what degree would you like me to go through the background, Mr. Chair?
I think perhaps on a high level. I don't know. The package was made available to all of committee. If there was anything that they can ask questions on, they will be afforded that opportunity. I think we can keep it generally to the main points.
Would you like me to proceed to the background now, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, please.
The first of the delegation requests will be to the Minister of Health and Deputy Premier Sylvia Jones, and as well to Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Michael Tobolo. The second delegation is related to the Ministry of Colleges and Universities and the Minister of Colleges and Universities, Nolan, good name, Quinn. Number C, or letter C, is Ministry of Long-Term Care, Minister of Long-Term Care, Natalia Kushendova-Bashta. And of course, we've got a significant stake in the long-term care space through the community paramedic and long-term care program, so not to steal anybody's thunder in the room here. And then item D, Mr. Chair, is the Ministry of Finance, Minister of Finance, Peter Bethenfalvey. And that concludes the request of the resolutions under number 5, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd seek a mover, please. Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor Wilmer. Background. Oh no, we've covered the background. With that, then, any questions or comments? I see none. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to bylaws, please, Chief.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And item number 6 within the bylaws, the renewal of the 911 PSAP agreement, so that the Health Committee recommend that County Council adopt a bylaw to authorize the service agreement between the County of Renfrew and the Ontario Provincial Police for the renewal of the 911 PSAP service agreement, and that the contract be executed, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Once again, I would seek a mover. Councillor Frenier, seconded by Councillor Purcell. The background on this now, please, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The background being that a service agreement between the County of Renfrew and the Ontario Provincial Police for the renewal of the 911 PSAP is due to expire on November 27th, 2024, and that the attached correspondence was received from the Municipal Policing Bureau advising of upcoming changes to the service agreement to align with the requirements of the Next Generation or NG 911 program, as well as outlined the rate for the services going forward, Mr. Chair. And the rate will remain at 56.1% cents per capita per annum. Accordingly, the annual cost of the service to the County of Renfrew in 2025 will be $59,670.77, based on the residential population of 106,365 for our population area, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments, committee? I see none. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Once again, back to you, Chief.
Item number 7, Mr. Chair, is that the Fire Services Agreement and the recommendation that Health Committee recommend the County Council adopt a bylaw to authorize a fire service agreement for the provision of communications, call taking, call alerting, and dispatching services to local fire services within the City of Pembroke and the County of Renfrew by the Renfrew Central Ambulance Communications Centre, which is the Ministry of Health, for a 2-year term commencing January 1st, 2025, and that the contract be executed.
Thank you. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Weir, seconded by Councillor Wilmer. Background, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Attached is a fire services agreement commencing January 1, 2025 for a 2-year term with an extension of up to additional 3 years. The County of Renfrew Emergency Services Department is responsible for the contract for call taking and fire dispatching, and a reminder that the Public Works Department is responsible for the maintenance of call taking and dispatching radio and notifications equipment and technology. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Weir.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. This isn't particularly related to this, but I'm just wondering, it's brought up in a thought. How many of our municipal fire services have the training or qualifications to actually be on the tiered response for medical, if we have any?
Chief?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the method for the domestic, because I'll speak to Garrison Petawawa separately, all fire services can state within their fire service agreement whether they'd like to be made available should a request come from the paramedic service for their assistance. So we approach that on an ad hoc as needed basis where there may be an extraordinary circumstance, a delay in time, or any additional assistance required. So for example, locked door rescue would be an example where fire services are contacted to be able to gain access to a property based upon their legislative responsibilities, similar to police. Secondly, lift assist, or the ability to provide person power to be able to assist with the extrication of an individual, often pertaining to locked door rescue as well. In terms of a broader medical response, the ad hoc basis allows us to be able to, should the individual municipal fire service state that they're open to receiving those calls, then we activate that on a fairly regular basis with those services, and it's dependent by municipality. Garrison Petawawa, because of their unique jurisdiction in terms of the federal property, the MPs and the fire services are notified of calls on base because of that jurisdictional responsibility. And then in those circumstances, they will often attend and provide whatever services they deem appropriate. They are not attending, to be clear, at our request as a paramedic service, whereas domestic fire services through the Ontario Fire Marshal's Agreement requires the paramedic service to make the request of the fire service, and then it needs to be mutually agreed upon in terms of a level of service to be provided in those circumstances. So that's why on an ad hoc basis, it does relieve the municipalities of some liability and in some circumstances, costs associated with maintaining a level of readiness versus the ability to choose to go when we request or choose not to go, as opposed to having to maintain a state of readiness whereas a medical call would be equal to or greater than a fire call. And many fire services are not interested in stating that we will not go to a fire because we've been requested to go on a medical call. So it's been a dialogue over the years. Individual fire services at different times have made requests to better understand what the opportunities are in that. We've supported some to have defibrillators available, for example, within their services, and overall it's been reflected from a cardiac arrest response perspective and critical intervention. It's been working quite well, certainly from our perspective, but there's always circumstances whereby we have to reach out and request assistance, and in large part, most municipal fire services have been very good to support the individuals that we're serving, and as well, the interoperability has been going quite well.
Thank you for allowing me to go off on a tangent, Chair.
All right, thank you. Anything further on item 7? A couple of points. I recognize that this is a 2-year agreement, but there is the possibility for an extension. There does seem, I don't know how 2025 is comparing to 2024, but it was my understanding in the prior agreement that is just now expired that I thought that there was an annual escalation of approximately 2%, and this is almost 5%. The 2026 fees over 2025, which is a not insubstantial increase for each of us. Every most of the municipalities in this room, Head Clara, Arnprior, Renfrew do not participate in this, but all of the others do. I wonder, are the terms of an extension the same, i.e. the 3 optional follow-on years? Is it with an expectation of a 5% increase?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not able to give you 24 to 25, but I did roll back to the outset of the original contract to 2020. So, for example, 2020 rates in terms of the call taking and alerting, the 2020 rate was $19.27 per. And the 2025 rate is $23.74 per. So an increase over that 5-year period of $4.47, or roughly 23% total increase in that period.
Okay. I do appreciate that. Perhaps we can take this offline because, of course, this is a 2-year term. But for my purposes, it would be more so as to what the particulars may be of an extension, because I don't see on Schedule D, there is not a schedule of annual escalation attached. It is simply just the pricing. The other element that I just wanted to, and this came in front of me a couple of months ago, actually, for an entirely different reason. I would invite committee, this is page 38 of your PDF agenda package, or those following on diligent. It is with respect to the Joint Steering Committee, Article 4, and in particular Article 4B. And this is just the wording that I would suggest. I don't know if we're far enough involved that this is the contract that's now due to be signed, but for future engagements, I would suggest an amendment. You will note in the 3rd line, immediately following the words Fire Communications Committee, comma, it says, one of whom shall be the chair. And when I first read that, I thought that one of the members of the Fire Communication shall be the chair of the Joint Steering Committee. But it's my understanding that, in fact, when it says one of whom shall be the chair, it means that one of the 2 members shall be the chair of the Fire Communications Committee. And I think that some clarity in there would probably be in order to precisely identify, because that was my reading of it, that one of those 2 members of the Fire Communications Committee would be the chair of the steering committee. I see Mr. Kelly saying that is not the intent. What I'm saying is that the wording is uncertain enough, and with very little editorial input, I think it could be given certainty as to what the intent of.
And I'm happy to cover that off, Mr. Chair. And I think it's well stated in terms of the potential interpretation of that. One of the complications of this document is it's been months with legal at the province, and any modifications at the outset to the province apart from the fee schedule were on the basis of shall be unacceptable unless deemed otherwise. So it might be something that we at a local level need to be able to define as opposed to modifying the contract at this state, given its the timeliness of the document. That being said, of course, we'll bring it back and we'll bring it to the province. I just don't want to create any delay in the signing of this contract, given the complexity of the politic associated with it.
Okay, fair enough. I'm, as I had said in the preamble, if there is some time sensitivity to getting this done, it's certainly something that could be held over, but I would highly advise that would be appropriate for the next term of this. And I also want to say, for those of you who might be given to think that on this committee, the chair perhaps gets a little too deep in the weeds, 2 months the province was reviewing this committee. So I am like lightning fast in comparison to that. Chief Nolan.
Lightning fast you are, Mr. Chair. I think there may be an opportunity within the terms of reference of the steering committee itself that we could clarify that at a local level. So we'll bring that back to the ministry and to that table, and hopefully we can correct or clarify that language within those specific terms of reference, not within the term of the contract with the province.
Understood, and I want to clearly understood as well that this is essentially a housekeeping, but when I first read that paragraph, I was confused, and then in discussing with the chief, that was not the intent that the chair of the steering committee be drawn from that fire communications committee. In any event, if it can be rectified within the regulations, if not the statute, then that's the approach. Anything further on this? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I may,
Please.
Ms. Toronjo was not available at the last meeting when we announced that Rhonda and Kathy were retiring. So just an official recognition that Melissa has joined our team as the administrative assistant, replacing Rhonda within the department. And I invited her up here today so she can get the same view that I have of all of you lovely folk and the same sensitivities, and to understand how, as we prepare packages, to best meet your needs. So welcome to Melissa, and thanks for that.
Thank you so much, and absolutely, on behalf of the committee, welcome, Melissa. This is also a heads up. Mr. Blackmore, as the chief had noted on one of those delegation requests, I believe Melissa was one-time Public Works staff member and was delivered unto the paramedics on a part-time basis, and yet here she sits. In any event, thank you for that, and welcome aboard. With that, I would now seek a motion to accept the report as a whole, please. Councillor Grills, seconded by Councillor Yon. Further and final opportunity for any question. I did miss one, and I apologize for that. This is within the bylaws. It is specifically the 911 primary public safety answering point. Fairly minor, but I note that in the third paragraph it says, based on a residential population served of 106,365, and I think now that I'm aware of about 12 different population bases that are used in the county of Renfrew, depending on the entity, depending on the application, anywhere, I think, from about 88,000, and I think this one might be the top dog at 106,000. What is the basis for this one? I'll keep it just to this one because we might have some specific knowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Daniel, is this an MPAC?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe so, but this one also has a couple other areas that aren't historically county populations. So I think it has the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan and some other area in there as well.
Some other area seems to crop up frequently in these things.
And if I was to estimate, it would likely be a very small portion of Whitney from a service area perspective, because of the fact that those historically the the 911 call transfers came to the Renfrew Central Ambulance Communication Center as opposed to going to North Bay or to Muskoka. So Craig may have further detail, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Kelly, please do illuminate.
Thank you, Chair. So my quick search of StatsCan data from 2021 lists 106,365 in the Renfrew County Census Subdivision, or in the Census Division. So that's where they're grabbing it from, right from StatsCan. So that includes the City of Pembroke, Renfrew County, and likely Pikwakanagan.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps in some of the other ones that I'm quoting, perhaps in the division, we didn't carry the 3, and it led to some other number. I'm uncertain. But in fact, I think that Statistics Canada and their census data can be relied upon as a definitive number. Perhaps we can agree moving forward that we shall use that. If there is nothing further, I will call the question on the report as a whole. All in favor? That is carried. Actually, we're doing okay. I think we can continue. I'm not looking at anyone in the room. I do apologize. I'm losing my mind. I'm losing my spot here. The long-term care report, Mr. Blackmore, if you will.
Thank you, Chair Donahue. Through to committee. Item number 1 is your treasurer's report. And maybe I'll just take a few moments to go through a few of the sore thumbs that kind of are sticking out at the moment. Starting with Bonnechere Manor report on page, bear with me one sec. Your page 57. The direct care salaries at 2.6 million roughly underspent, and that is largely due to our recruitment challenges at the moment. That is largely offset by purchase services by way of agency staff filling the roles of PSWR and an RPN. Pleased to advise that though we are on track to wean ourselves from agency dependency by mid-year. So we've made some significant strides with regard to PSW recruitment in particular. On their next page, 58, there's a miscellaneous line that stands out, and budgeted at 900, coming in at just around 9,000. Almost 10,000. That's a line for we have in place for, well, miscellaneous, but it's to capture at this point meals that are associated with overtime work of our QP members. So it's something we'll have to look at in our upcoming budget. In addition to that, as I'd mentioned, purchase services at 2.387 million to offset the PSWR and RPN staffing that's ongoing at the manor. On page 59, I apologize for the scrolling through pages here. The raw food, at 59. Yeah, we see that it appears that we're overspent by nearly $20,000. But in actuality, that will even out, and that we receive some additional funds come September. So we should see a negative variance at year end where that's concerned. And moving on to surplus adjustments for capital purchases. We're showing a $330,406 remaining. I've been advised that those capital projects are currently finished, and we'll be seeing a savings on what we had originally anticipated, what was budgeted anyhow, but I need to confirm that. And that concludes some of the things that are standing out for the Bonnechere Manor report. The Miramichi Lodge report starts on page 62. And the first item, salaries and client programs, showing $106,000 underspent, and that's largely due to, we had a social worker that I went off on a maternity leave, that we didn't fill that position. Pleased to say that our social worker has now returned. In addition to that, there were some vacancies in the client programs department as well that we're still recruiting for. Next line is salaries for nursing services, showing a $629,000 underspend. And that's largely due to the money that we receive for direct care waging salaries from the province that we're still attempting to recruit our full allotment. We have noticed a significant increase in our hours of per day, hours of direct care work per day. They were hovering around just over 3.5, 3.6. Those are hours worked, but hours scheduled, we're close to that. We're actually a little bit over the 4 hours of care, direct care per day. It's replacing those sick calls and those absences, particularly over the summer month, that become a challenge. Moving down to housekeeping services. See a variance over budget, fairly significant for a small department. And that's largely due to retirement payout, WSIB, and some sick leave at higher than anticipated rates for the year as well. In linen, again, an overage of $35,000. And that's a retirement payout that was unbudgeted, and some extra staffing that we had to put on when we were in outbreak to do surface cleaning. And surplus adjustments for capital, $26,290 unspent, and that's largely, that is due to savings. All capital projects are finished, we finished under budget. I think those are the highlights of the Treasury report. I recognize there are many, many lines, and you may have a question about any one for which I'm ready to give an answer if you wish.
I think that you probably have touched upon any of the substantial variances, but I would certainly open it up. Committee, any questions on either Manor or Lodge? Councillor Murphy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just two things. Thanks for touching on the other expenses or miscellaneous. I'm not a fan, so I like the explanation. The other thing is, so between you and Chief Nolan, you're having a lot of laundry issues. Is there some way to fix this, or is this just the lay of the land now?
Mr. Blackmore, please.
If I could, it's funny you mentioned that. We just have received our new folding machine at Bonnechere Manor, which I'd recognize the overage was at the Lodge. But we're looking to see some efficiencies achieved there. And actually, we've had both laundry departments visit each other and glean efficiencies. So particularly where at the Manor is concerned, we're going to see some operational efficiencies achieved there. But the overages on the Lodge side were largely unpredictable anomalies with regard to payouts unanticipated.
Thank you. It was just odd that Mike Nolan's having dry cleaning problems and you're having linens overages.
It's the fastidiousness. Anything further on either of the Treasurer's report for either of the long-term care homes? There was two that I had, Mr. Blackmore. I note for the adult day program at the Manor, the expectation that does not require a municipal contribution at this point. There has been, is that showing perhaps a money making? It's in parentheses. Ultimately, the expectation is that there is not a cost associated with the adult day program. I'm assuming that this, by the end of the year, gets reconciled away. Is that, perhaps that's for Mr. Burke?
Through you, Chair. Yes, that's correct. So the adult day program is one of those provincial fundings where you are 100% funded up to a maximum, and any amount you do not spend, you pay back. Any amount you spend over, $1 over, is entirely yours. So it's one of those ones we try to bring in right on the line of funding.
And at the end of the day, if that means a case of pop, perhaps, so be it. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Burke. The other, and I cannot recall at this point which Homes capital program, both of which are under budget in a surplus position with, as I understand it, all of the expenditures made. But I think also we advanced, at least at one of the homes, some procurement because, was it roofing or HVAC or something that we had gotten a very favorable tender on that we were able to facilitate an enhancement, if you will, to our capital program. I wonder if you could speak to that, Mr. Blackmore, or perhaps Mr. Burke, whoever is most appropriate.
Thank you. Maybe I'll start out and I'll defer to Daniel through to committee. So the HVAC project is something we're currently so we have an HVAC project we're currently developing an RFP for at the moment, but you've identified that there is something that we achieved that's a savings on?
Earlier this year, there was a capital initiative that came forward that was not part of the budgeted capital program from January, but it was funded through substantial savings that were going to be realized on a fairly substantial project in 2024 that had come in substantially at tender under what had been anticipated. And I cannot recall if that was the Manor or the Lodge. Perhaps Mr. Burke, you can shed some light.
Through you, Chair, going just from my anecdotal memory, I believe it was the roofing job at the Manor, which we do in segments, because it's not a flat roof as in our other buildings. It's a shingled slope roof, and we're doing certain amounts every time, and we're able to do maybe one other section at the same time.
Okay, yeah, and I know that we repurposed some dollars, and all I was ultimately trying to get at is, so it is the benefit of essentially coming in under budget on all of our capital program, but also being able to advance an element from following years into our 2024 program. And that was, I was not looking for precision on this, but I do think that it was in fact a roofing project that did provide the latitude to be able to advance some other, and it might have been lifts or something like that. I cannot recall particularly. Ultimately, it was the high level positions that I wanted to discuss. At the end of the day, the thing that I certainly want to underscore is the bottom line municipal surplus, setting aside the PSAB wizardry surplus, but the municipal surplus at the Bonnechere Manor of $3.4 million, and ultimately at the Lodge of $1.8 million, 3/4 of the way through the year. I'm fairly certain that there will be some reconciling and some issues coming forward in the fourth quarter that will likely reduce those. But at this point at Q3, it is to be commended as well. The chief that I think is showing a $1.8 million surplus at this point to be 3/4 through the year and having substantial, what's that, 7.3 million at September 30 surplus is a comfortable feeling. If it were a parenthetical number, it would be an uncomfortable feeling. So, in any event, thank you for that. Anything further on the Treasurer's reports? Seeing none, please do continue, Mr. Blackmore.
Thank you, Chair. Through to committee. Item number 2 is the long-term care resident statistics. So the first 2 tables detail the bed vacancies for each of the county homes from August to October. And just a reminder that each home must maintain a 97% occupancy in order to receive 100% of their funding. And the next table is the wait list for the County of Renfrew long-term care homes. Currently 850 applicants awaiting a placement, an increase of 14 since the last report, and 226 in a long-term care seeking transfer to their first choice home, totaling 1,076 applicants. And to note that both Bonnechere Manor and Miramichi Lodge have favorable wait list in terms of the preference throughout the county. And Now we're into resolutions. Shall we proceed, or?
I guess we might as well tend to the second information items before we get there. Any questions, comments on the long-term care resident statistics committee? I see none, so please do carry on to resolutions. Mr. Blackmore.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 3 is a resolution seeking a request for delegation at the upcoming Roma conference. A recommendation that the Health Committee recommends to County Council staff that staff submit delegation requests at the upcoming Rural Ontario Municipal Association conference consistent with the 2023-2026 County of Renfrew Strategic Plan, pursuant to seniors' supportive housing needs, specifically to advocate for a campus of care builds as a proven made-in-Ontario model representing a desirable and cost-effective means to support seniors at home in lieu of long-term care placement, and that the chair of the standing committee along with the warden be designated to attend the delegation.
Thank you. And seek a mover, please. Councillor Lafreniere, seconded by Councillor Grills. Again, background, Mr. Blackmore.
Thank you, Chair. Through the committee, across Ontario, there is a vast need and opportunity for increased seniors care that reaches beyond those awaiting long-term care placement. Many seniors are caught in a gap where care needs do not meet the threshold for long-term care placement, yet the minimal care supports required to maintain independent living are not available or are financially prohibitive. As advocated by Advantage Ontario, seniors supportive housing is touted as a missing piece in the continuum of care spanning independent living and long-term care placement. Often, senior supportive housing can be found co-located with a long-term care home, sharing common grounds and resources in what is often referred to as a campus of care. With supports averaging $62 a day versus $200 a day for long-term care, a senior residing in supportive housing setting is supported to maintain a quality of life that is commensurate with independent living. Staff are currently researching existing campus of care models within Ontario and are leveraging the expertise of Advantage Ontario to glean experiential insight into funding and build opportunities.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, committee? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. On to item 4, please.
Thank you, Chair. Item 4 is a recommendation for the 2025 operation of short-stay beds at Bonnechere Manor, Miramichi Lodge. A recommendation that the Health Committee recommends that County Council approve the continued operation of 2 short-stay respite beds at Miramichi Lodge and continue to pause the reopening of the 2 short-stay respite beds at Bonnechere Manor for the operational year of 2025.
Thank you. Once again, a mover, please. Councillor Weir, second to Councillor Purcell. Background.
Ontario Regulation 246/22 under the Fixing Long-Term Care Act 2021 defines short-stay program as a program in which a person is admitted to long-term care home for a definite number of days. The Ontario Health East requires that long-term care homes that operate short-stay respite care beds within their approved licensed bed complement formally apply each year through the short-stay bed application. Due to the pandemic and low staffing complement, the respite programs at each Bonnechere Manor and Miramichi Lodge were paused in March 2020. Miramichi Lodge reopened 2 short-stay beds in February 2023 and is seeking to continue to provide this service in 2025. Presently, Bonnechere Manor is not in a position to effectively operate 2 short-stay beds in 2025. This is primarily due to the ongoing reliance on agency-registered nurses to perform the more frequent and intensive admission assessments associated with respite clients. It is proposed that the 2 respite beds in question for Bonnechere Manor remain as long-term care beds. Homes are requested to submit their applications by the deadline November 18, 2024, for which an extension has been requested and has been granted.
Thank you very much. Committee, questions, comments? I see none. I certainly recognize the challenges at the Manor. We've been experiencing those challenges for some time, but it I think underscores how these cascade as well. The respite care beds I think are a vital component to our community. It is that it should be borne in mind that the essentially unpaid labor in so much of our society that is addressing the issues that we also confront here is enormous. The GDP of that unpaid component towards raising families from right from birth right through seniors' years is enormous. So it certainly is unfortunate, but that is the world that we do inhabit. So I am very hopeful that we are able to in short order at the Manor, be able to return to that once again, but recognize the challenge that does confront us. Anything further? Seeing not, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. On to the bylaws, please, Mr. Blackmore.
Thank you, Chair. Bylaw number 5. Item 5 is a bylaw seeking authorization of a funding agreement for Behaviour Supports Ontario program for Bonnechere Manor. A recommendation that the Health Committee recommends that County Council adopt a bylaw authorizing the Warden and Chief Administrative Officer to sign the 2024-25 funding allocations for Behaviour Supports Ontario in Long-Term Care Agreement for base funding in the amount of $42,000 in the fiscal year 2024-25 with Ontario Health East, and that the Finance and Administration Committee be so advised.
Thank you. Mover. Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor Wilmer. Is there a background? Yeah, there it is. Background, please.
Thank you, Chair. Its background attaches the 2024-25 funding allocations for Behaviour Supports Ontario and Long-Term Care Agreement from Ontario Health East, advising that Bonnechere Manor will receive base funding in the amount of $42,000 in the fiscal year 2024-25 to support training and or equipment needs.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That too is carried. Item 6, please.
Item number 6, Chair, through the committee, is a recommendation to continue participation in the community commitment for nurses. A recommendation that the Health Committee recommends that the County of Council adopt a bylaw authorizing the Warden and Chief Administrative Officer to sign the Community Commitment Program for Nurses 2024-27 support agreement with Ontario Health to support the recruitment and retention of nurses in Ontario, and that the Finance and Administration Committee be so advised.
Thank you very much once again, Mr. Blackmore. Mover, please. Councillor Yon, second Councillor Grills. Background.
Thank you, Chair. Attaches the Community Commitment Program for Nurses 2024-27 support agreement that the Ministry of Health has created in response to the long-standing shortage of nurses, including registered nurses, registered practical nurses, and nurse practitioners in Ontario hospitals, long-term care homes, home and community care agencies, primary care and mental health, and additions organization. This program seeks to support the recruitment and retention of nurses in Ontario who meet certain criteria as detailed within the agreement.
Thank you very much. Committee, once again, questions, comments? See none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Chair, if I could just add to that just briefly, that equates to roughly potentially up to $25,000 over a 2-year period to flow through us to the RN or RPN recruited.
Thank you very much. That is certainly salient information. I appreciate that, Mr. Blackmore. Moving on then to the leased space at Miramichi Lodge.
Thank you, Chair. Through the committee, item 7 is a recommendation pertaining to the leased space at Miramichi Lodge. A recommendation that the Health Committee recommends that County Council adopt a bylaw authorizing the Warden and Chief Administrative Officer to sign a lease agreement between Miramichi Lodge and Ms. Brenda Kincaid, foot care service provider, Miramichi Lodge, for the occupancy of a leased space room within the lodge located at 725 Pembroke Street West, Pembroke, Ontario, at the annual amount of $4,906.92 for the period of January 1, 2025 to December 31, 2025, and that the Finance and Administration Committee be so advised.
Thank you very much. Once again, a mover, please. Councillor Wilmer, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Background.
Miramichi Lodge was designed to include additional spaces to lease in order to generate revenue. Ms. Brenda Kincaid, foot care service provider at Miramichi Lodge, currently leases the 240 square foot space located on the second floor and provides foot care services to external clients. Ms. Kincaid has indicated that she wishes to continue the lease space for a 12-month term at a 3% increase over the previous year for an annual amount of $4,906.92 payable in monthly installments.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments? Actually very pleased. I think that there's been a fairly lengthy relationship has now been established with Ms. Kincaid. Is that correct, Mr. Blackmore?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. I'd now seek a motion to accept the long-term care report, please. Councillor Lafreniere, seconded by Councillor Murphy. Further and final opportunity for question. Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. I think it is 10:35. I think I would like to, because we do have to go into closed, pardon me? Oh, Board of Health? Okay. So we'll get through everything except the closed session before we actually pass a resolution to go into closed. We will take a 10-minute break, but let us carry on. Item 13, the Board of Health minutes. A recommendation is that the Board of Health minutes for June 25th, 2024 and September 24th, 2024 be noted and received. Mover, please. Councillor Weir, seconded by Councillor Wilmer. Any questions, comments? You can direct them at the sole member of the Board of Health. Actually, there's two members, Councillor Purcell as well, virtually. If there's any question or comment, perhaps they can provide some clarity. I see none. All in favor? The minutes are carried. There is no new business. There is, however, now a closed meeting. So before I even entertain a motion to go into closed, I would advise on a 10-minute break. And if we can reconvene here at 10:45, it's an 8-minute break now, as it turns out. 10:45, 8 minutes, chop, chop. Welcome back, everyone. I admire punctuality. It is next to godliness. There is a matter of new business that I was advised during the break, so I will yield the floor. Councillor Murphy, you advised you had some new business.
My apologies, Chair. I should have intervened before the break. Just a reminder that the Zone 6 meetup virtually is at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. If you haven't registered, please do. And I've got a bit of a presentation, and then I'll be doing question and answer at the end. It is only an hour, so if you would like to join, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate you bringing that forward as new business. It is important for that to be disseminated. Thank you. I will once again, though, open. Is there any further new business? I see none. So with that, we do require a closed meeting this morning. I don't know, Mr. Kelly, this would be section 239 2T? C. C. Thank you very much. 239 2C, this would be a negotiation, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm quite convinced that Ms. Starkenberg knows what that one is. I would seek a mover, please. Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor Weir. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. With that, just before we commence any of the business, or Ms. Poplinski, if you could identify when we are clear. Welcome back, everyone. I appreciate your patience. If, in fact, you have been watching the live stream of today's committee meeting, thank you much for your patience. We have completed item 15. We are at item 16, the adjournment. Just before I seek a motion to adjourn, as has been typical, this is the last committee meeting for the Health Committee of 2024. I want to extend my enormous appreciation first to committee for your diligence and your work and your effort that you put into always coming prepared to our meetings. It makes them so much easier. I also have to acknowledge the incredible staff that we have. Very welcome to join staff, the directors of Development and Property and Community Services into the room as well, because there has gotten to be this synergy, this synchronicity in our departments, and I think that your input and all of your commitment and capabilities have been brought to bear to this committee. I think it's important also to articulate a lot of the advancements that continue to be made through this committee, through the City of Pembroke and the collaborative effort of the City and the County of Renfrew. As I'd indicated when we opened, one of the most recent is the opening of the Eganville Paramedic Station. To your mayor is we are two households within one house, and it is important at all times, I think, to continue to remember that. But I think as well, if you go back early into the year, very pleased to have responded in a very rapid fashion, though I will note that it was essentially in Q4 of 2023, but the warming shelter, recognizing the need in our community, that out of that first initiative that we have primed to the well that has now led to Mesa, the next step in Mesa is to formalize this and not have to jerry-rig the funding through various different reserve capacities. I'm uncertain how Pembroke arrived at its commitment, but I know that we cobbled together at the County of Renfrew the commitment required of the county. I'm assuming it was a likewise situation from the City of Pembroke. It is important that we continue to move forward and press forward, that this needs to be part of how we address our challenges with substance use, with homelessness, with mental health. We cannot advance outside of this. It is important to recognize the continued expansion of VTAC into our communities. We are cognizant, we cannot be anything but cognizant almost on a daily basis when we are reminded of the challenges that exist across the health sector in this province. And we continue to be innovative in meeting the needs of our community. And it is important, as I have often indicated to my colleague from Deep River, appropriately, whenever we are discussing some of these innovative measures, it is vital that this continue to be funded 100% by the province of Ontario. Property taxes are not the appropriate place to be funding health care in the province of Ontario. We have been doing that. We have been checking the boxes here. And as with most things, you get to the end of the year, and there is the sigh of relief that we have gotten through a year. But I think it is incredibly important that we recognize the value that is brought to our communities throughout the year. And I am very pleased to sit in this chair, in this room, at this committee. It is very easy to appear to be doing a good job when you have the incredible staff that are putting all of the effort and all of the work into being well prepared, well presented, answering the questions every time they are posed. So I once again commend everyone that is associated with this and fully appreciate the trust that has been engendered in me by the warden and the chairmanship of this committee for the past year, and I thank you all very much for your dedicated service. With that, I would seek a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Lafreniere, seconded by Councillor Grills. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, committee.